the witch. Okay, we're going to be talking about the science of well-being and your signature strengths. Yes, you want to use your strengths all the time, every day, many times a day. You know, so much of who we are is built, I should start this talk like this. So much of who we are is built around our identity, what we decide to identify with, right? So, and that can come from experiences. So experiences happen and I decide I'm a loser. Experiences happen and I decide I'm no good at this, no good at that, right? And we develop these identities. And what we've learned is that a lot of those identities, since they're picked in some ways by the default mode network, we don't want to rely just on those. We want to self-define our own identity. So you want to identify with your signature strengths. Your signature strengths need to be the beginning of your identity, not your weaknesses, your strengths. And this was a huge finding from this new field called positive psychology, where they realized that psychology in the first part, the first 200 years of psychology, the science of psychology was focusing way too much on what was weak about us, and what we focus on grows. So we were focusing on growing what was weak about us, right? Rather than something like the Olympics or how we can be our best. So what they learned, and what this PowerPoint will show you, is that what we've learned is that we want to lead with our strengths. We want to celebrate our strengths. These are like gifts that both came from the fairies that tapped you with their magic wands and gave you some of these tendencies to be able to good at these things at birth, but you've also cultivated them. They come from you. You worked hard on them. So we're going to be talking about your strengths. Now, this one talks about how the media, the news media, is always trying to capture our fears because that's what grabs our attention. Because of the negativity bias, we will gravitate immediately to things that are capturing fears. And they're trying to get looks and likes. So they use sex and scary stuff to capture our attention, but it's not an accurate representation of the world. An accurate representation of the world is that you go to the grocery store and that clerk showed up for work, and the stockman stocked the shelves and the stock people, and all these things keep going. Us, you, and our fellow humans keep getting up and doing the hard work of going to work, doing the work of life. And it takes a lot of work to keep up with life. You may have heard the term entropy. Entropy means that things are automatically, always, naturally falling apart. So what that means is that you are always, after you eat, your body is busy digesting that food and making you hungry again. So you have to go eat again. And most of our ancestors had to focus a huge amount on eating again, right? Being able to eat again. Some people in some countries still have to do that, right? But what we want to emphasize or really see is the reality is that people are mostly getting out there, keeping going, resilient through the pandemic, adapting to change and keeping the flow of life going. And you all stayed in college through a pandemic. Now, people will talk about this global pandemic. This is a massive thing that are going through, like the internet. It's going to have massive long-term consequences for us, many of them positive, because there's many that we've already seen that we can tell are positive. Even though we went through hard challenges, many of our hard challenges have silver linings that are positive. So cheering squad for you. Yay. I imagine a big cheering squad. And it's good to imagine in the back of our minds a cheering squad. I had this huge job to do of cleaning out my garage. And I have this really bad tendency to think I can do things in a million times less time than it actually takes. It's called the optimistic bias for task completion officially, but I have it really bad. So I think, well, I can go out there and get that thing done in 4 to 5 hours. Really, it took like 6 attempts at 4 to 5 hours. But every time I go out there, I'd be too overwhelmed. So I broke it into little chunks, and I do like 15, 20 minutes of it at a time. And I finally got it done, and I couldn't believe it. So I started to sense this cheering squad in my head going, yay, you did it. And I realized what a healthy, good thing it is to have a imaginary cheering squad in your head going, yay, you did it. One of the things they know about the science of resilience is that we do better when we cheer ourselves on, right? When we support ourselves, when we yay, when we have intermittent pats on the back, that actually releases dopamine. which we're going to be talking about next week, is the chemistry of emotion. So imagine that cheering squad, get that cheering squad going for you. So some of this is a little bit of a review to tie in what we learned about Stoicism to what we're learning now. Our ancestors went through crazy things, even in Ice Age, 15,000 BC. I don't know if you guys know this, but the world froze over. And without any of the kind of advantages we have right now, they still made it through. You come from unbelievably hardy stock of ancestors who are extremely strong. So last week we were talking about Stoicism and how there are some different schools in ancient Greece. One of the things I want to call your attention to is this particular slide. This is a new slide. This shows you a little bit of timeline perspective, especially as we start to talk about Buddhism and the yogis in the coming weeks, just to get some insights like we did with Taoism, which came from China. And we talked about Stoicism. It's not like we're doing a full dive, but we're just getting a feel for what Stoicism is about. Some of these early traditions that were dedicated, the Stoics were very dedicated to mindfulness, being aware, meta awareness. So here's ancient Greece down here where the Stoics were, and this is Italy and Rome. This is the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire that went on. And the Roman Empire went through all this pink territory. So you can see it traversed a lot, including to this corner of India. Okay, so Zeno, one of the Stoics, was 300 BC. The yogis were at least as far back as 750 BC and probably further. And so they're focusing on the breath, right? And staying still, and they're listening. And then Buddha was 500 BC, and he was also a very virtues-based, as you'll see, if anybody knows about Buddhism, it's very virtues-based philosophy, just like Stoicism is, based on values and virtues and trying to cultivate virtues through hardship, but also very much about meditation. So there's it's been often observed, there's a lot of common themes between Stoicism and these philosophies from the East, and even Taoism. But you can see here, because of the Roman territory, and that Zeno was a sailor, that sailors would tell stories, right? And so he would have heard, they covered all, so he would have heard stories of the yogis, stories of Buddha, for sure. Taoism didn't happen until more Aurelius's time, but Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, Zeno was the founder started talking about Stoicism, and then Aurelius was another famous Stoic. He would have been aware of the Tao, which is the idea of not fighting life. I find myself often fighting life, right? I'm mad that happened. That's fighting life. So the Stoics were like, it's unreasonable to fight life. You want to fight to change things, but fighting life in the moment is unreasonable. So just wanted you to be aware that these ideas were migrating around each other in this area at that time. They were hearing from each other. So Stoicism, essential idea, I will be better for this, right? The determination to see challenges as a way to cultivate improving ourselves and becoming better. And we also talked about how we approach the outer world from an inner world state. So we just experienced a meditation where we transitioned our inner world state. And if mad guy anger, this is from Inside Out. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but it's adorable. If mad guy, and these are all the limbic emotions, right? So if mad guy's taken over, that's totally different world than if joy is more. So what we want to cultivate is joy more in our being. So growing that green brain purposefully. Now, the Stoics saw this kind of growing a green brain state as cultivating an inner citadel. And that idea of the inner citadel, that we're sort of the manager of an inner city of billions of cells and neurons and systems, memories, ideas, feelings, habits, urges, all these things are part of our inner city. And so we want to work with that inner city, be a good leader or guide or coach to our own inner city, cultivating it, loving it, right? So the idea of the inner world is like an inner village, an inner citadel that we take care of. And we ask ourselves how we would like to take care of our inner citadel, right? And then Franklin, you gave us that wonderful meditation on befriending ourselves, which is exactly the way we want to rule our inner citadel, because we don't want to be a tyrant or cruel. It doesn't work. People just rebel, right? So we talked about the 4 virtues that Stoics valued most, what they tried to cultivate through each action and moment. And what's going to happen is some emotional state like anger will take over, and it'll take a lot more effort to move us toward the virtues we want to cultivate when we're in those states. But when we're in those states, these virtues that we decide on, that were part of this week's assignment. So deciding on your own virtues, the ones that matter to you, which may evolve, but it's nice to have 3 or so in your mind, so that you can use them as a North Star to help you direct your attention. These were Aristotle's list of virtues. This was before Stoicism. Ben Franklin had a list of virtues. These were him. And he kept a list every day, and he would put a dot, see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He would put a dot next to the virtues that he failed at, where he had a hard time. Okay, so he tracked how well he did with his virtues. And we can see the 9 attitudes of mindfulness as virtues as well, right? So there's a very broad kind of list of virtues that we can choose from and decide, when we decide on the ones that are important to us, the ways we want to grow. This is self-directing our growth rather than just being however, right? And then seeing these virtues as our North Star, as a way to focus our thinking that we have some control of. So the signature strengths test, we're going to learn a little bit today about where that came from. This is a list. Sometimes they use a little bit different words, depending on which strengths test that you take, but they're all based on the VIA inventory of signature strengths. And so I'm going to show you where that came from. One of the things that I like to do with this list, with lists like these, is look and check off the ones where I'm doing really well, and then check off the ones like organized where I need to work on it more, right? So I'm really aware of what I want to work on when I look at a master list like this. So where did signature strengths come from? This is Martin Seligman. He was the founder, well, he was an expert on depression and president of the American Psychological Association for 20 years. And he was really well known for being cranky and sort of serious, very congenial, extraordinary professional, but really serious, until one day he was working in the garden. And this was about 20 years ago, it was in the 90s. So his daughter's grown now. And his daughter said, "Dad, when I was 5, I used to be a whiner, but when I was 5, I decided not to be a whiner anymore. And I successfully managed to quit that." Pretty amazing daughter. So if I can stop whining, you can stop being so grouchy. And I could just see a 5-year-old saying that, I could just see a little 5-year-old with moxie saying that to her dad. Well, so Seligman took it to heart, and he really started thinking about it, and he had an epiphany. And he thought to himself, I'm going to see if I can do that. I'd see if I can change myself into not being a grumpy guy. And he did. He did transform himself, but in the same time, he transformed psychology. Now, Seligman was an expert in depression. So he was one of the world, or he still is, one of the world leading experts in depression. And one of the things that he's famous for is this thing called learned helplessness. Now, he studied this in dogs first. Learned helplessness is a pattern that happens with depression, along with a lot of negative thoughts. And the way he studied it with dogs will seem cruel. They put them in a box that had electrical bars on the bottom, and they put a small electrical voltage, and the dog would jump to the other side. And then they do a voltage over here, and the dog would jump to the other side. But then they put a partition here so the dog couldn't jump. And they do the electrical voltage, which was not, it was painful, but not life-threatening. And so what happened was, about 5 or 6 adults, the dog wouldn't jump anymore. He would not jump to the other side. Well, he couldn't jump. He couldn't jump to the other side because the panel was in. But then they took, after about 5 or 6 experiences of that, they took the panel back out. And what they found was about 3/4 of the dogs would not jump over anymore. They just stayed there, even though they could jump over again. They had learned helplessness. They had learned this pattern of withdrawal. And we can see this pattern of withdrawal in ourselves when we try something and we're not any good at it and we just kind of give up. We say, screw it, I'm not any good at that, and we let it go. But that's false, because we can get better at everything. We know that from growth mindset, that we have a growth mindset because of neuroplasticity. We can get better at anything. But we have this vulnerability to giving up that Seligman found. Now, I want to show you a video clip of learned helplessness in the classroom. And what this will show is how this can happen cognitively, right? With the way that we think. So let's bring up the learned helplessness in the classroom video. Here it is. So here we're going to see a video clip that illustrates learned helplessness in the classroom, which is a very famous phenomenon. Eventually we're going to experiencing it. All right, so check this out.
Fitting in is not fitting in. You talked about acceptance. Now, to understand how this happens and how this looks and what this feels like, I'm going to have you do an activity. This is an on your own activity, and just this is not to tax you. These are easy things. This is just to kind of get you feeling what we're going to go over. So everybody, if you would take out a short piece of paper. I'm going to pass out these papers, and just keep them face down. And if you would, no one write on these, write on your own papers. Keep them face down. Yeah. Everybody have one? If you would, just do them one at a time, and I will tell you when to do them. Everybody turn it over. Just do your own work. And this isn't meant to be hard. These are anagrams. Just do the first one only. Go ahead and solve it. An anagram is rearrange the letters to form a word. Just one. Just rearrange those letters to form a word. When you're done, I need to see your hand raised. Keep going. We'll wait. Keep your hands up, please.
Okay, so let me just give you a quick insider scoop on what's going on here. Anagrams, she gave them the anagram tab, and so they're going to turn it into a different word, and they would turn it into bat, right? Pretty easy. Okay, so what's really happened is that she's given this half of the room easy anagrams, and she's given this half of the room impossible anagrams. Okay, but they don't know it. All right, so these guys are looking up and looking around and saying they have it. Why don't I have it? Right, so self-doubt. We're moving into a limbic hijacked brain now, right? Slowly but surely. Even you don't have to be completely hijacked to be hijacked. You can just be a little hijacked, but the blood flow is going from here to here, going, ah. Okay, so let's continue. They have impossible anagrams. Can't solve those.
This isn't meant to be difficult.
She's making it worse by putting in the this isn't meant to be difficult.
Don't even worry about number one. Go to number two, solve that one. Again, when you're done, I want to see your hands up.
So you can see everybody on that side of the room has impossible to solve ones.
We're going to go ahead and do number three. For number three, rearrange the letters, and as soon as you do, go ahead and put your hand up.
Okay. So here's what's wild. For number three, they all have the same anagram. But these guys had gotten psyched out. Bang. Just like that. Look how quick and easy. Okay, we'll watch a few more minutes of it. She'll explain it.
Here's what you need to know.
They all had
We're
the
both
same one on
given
the third.
two
First
different
half
lists.
psyched up,
This side
no
of the
problem.
room was
Second half
given
psyched out,
these three
bombed
words.
it.
The left side of the room, here you go. They were given bat. What would the word be? The second one, they were given lemon. Brian, the word? Melon. They were easy. The trick here was both of you were given the third word, which was the same. The third word was cinerama, which was American. Your first two words on this side of my classroom were not solvable. They were impossible tasks. I'm sorry. I know, but here's what we did this for. I was able to induce something called learned helplessness in the left side of the room very easily within about 5 minutes. I want.
Okay, so wild, huh? Wild. So now can you see how powerful it is to have that cheering squad inside and to be willing to focus on the strengths? Seligman realized from this that if we can learn to feel helpless, learned helpless. You saw learned helplessness in that classroom being induced by discouragement. And she put in a cognitive head trip when she said, this isn't meant to be hard. So that would have doubled their anxiety. This isn't supposed to be hard, but I'm having a hard time. What's wrong with me? Right? That's where, and so the brain shuts down and isn't able to think complexly. Absolutely fascinating. So he realized that if we can learn helplessness, we can also learn optimism. We can learn strength. We can learn to feel strong and resilient. And he started an entire field of psychology that's huge right now called positive psychology, which is based on, it's the psychology of strengths and resilience. And Seligman is the one who came up with that signature strengths, and they've tested and retested it many times. What they realize is that with a positive mindset, we can get completely different results. So switching to an optimistic mindset. Now, this is a model that will help you see the difference between what we could say is what they refer to here as a victim versus creator mindset. And that does not mean that we aren't sometimes victimized, but rather that, because we are sometimes victimized. And when that happens, we go through some trauma that we need to heal from, right? The same way that if we fall off our mountain bike and break our leg, our leg is going through trauma that we need to heal from. So when we're victimized, we do need to go have trauma that we need to heal from. And there is a period of going through that trauma when we go through processing negative, painful emotions that need to be released and flowed on, right? And healed. But what they're talking about here is victim with the idea of seeing oneself as a chronic victim, the mindset of learned helplessness, really. And when we're in that mindset, we tend to blame a lot, complain a lot, excuse, and repeat behaviors that don't work, right? And then when we're in what they refer to as the creator mindset, when we're in an empowered mindset, in a green brain mindset, we seek solutions, we take action, and we try new things. And we can see how when we go through something difficult, and maybe we get a traffic ticket driving home, we were driving too fast or something, we come home and we vent. We didn't like the experience, we vent about it, right? We tell our partner, meh, 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 meh. And we might do that a few times. But we all know when our venting is becoming complaining, when venting is becoming habitual, and we're just repeating the story of the negative emotions within ourselves. So we want to be able to transform our stories. We want to be able to shift our stories to empowerment stories, right? And I think about the easy example of the printer breaking. First, we get upset and mad, but then we have to solve the problem, right? So the idea is to shifting our mindset to the creator mindset as much as possible, to the self-empowered mindset as much as possible, knowing that it's not like, well, some people get to a place where they're pretty much almost always there, but it's very natural. The automatic responses without training is to go over here. So we're going to train ourselves to shift over here more quickly rather than staying over. So one of the ways that we can do that, and we'll look at various ways to do that over the next couple of weeks, is to lead with our strengths. Okay, Seligman is the one who realized that rather than we over focus on our weaknesses, puts us in a learned helplessness mindset. So we really want to be almost marinating ourselves in our strengths, not to become arrogant or egotistical, but to become empowered and capable to cultivate a green brain state. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention is that you can definitely lead with your strengths and values on things like your resume. I mean, you want to have what your values are at the top of your resume. And you want to list your strengths in your resume, and you can draw on the Strengths Quest list to come up with other words and ideas that you could use and include in your resume as part of your strengths, right? But you really want to become aware of your strengths. We also want to be aware of areas that we need to grow stronger. The growing edge, I've heard it called, right? We call it areas that we're not yet strong, okay, where we want to build those up, and we can use our strengths to help us get stronger at our weaknesses. We'll see that in a moment. So you want to have your values on your resume as well as your strengths on your resume. An example of this was I was in on an evaluation recently of a faculty member who had to make this pivot to online learning, but was very behind in computer technology. And I mean, really behind. And one of the things that they did was they realized that since their values included continually grow and improve, that they just needed to bite the bullet and master this technology as fast as they could, even though they were in senior years and been teaching a long time. So it helped them shift out of the mindset of putting minimal work into it to really diving into it full bore. So we can use our values at work. And in fact, we want to cultivate using our strengths every single day. They find that people who flourish and are really doing well use their strengths every single day. They use their strengths in different ways every day, right? At least a few of them. So we want to try to find ways to use several of your strengths that you guys listed every day in new and unique ways. It emboldens us, it empowers us, and it makes us feel good. Also, applying strengths to weaknesses. For example, homework, finances, whatever it is, you want to think, if those are your weak spot, you want to think creatively about how you can bring your strengths to help you get better at these weak spots. For example, if creativity and playfulness strength, how can you bring creativity and playfulness to getting your work done, right? Add popcorn, add fun office supplies, right? Whatever you can think of. If working with other people is one of your strengths, then you probably would enjoy doing more study groups and working together with other people. So what we want to do is be thinking about how we can apply our strengths every day. It'll help us feel happier to use our strengths in our lives every day. And we're encouraged to use them in new and different ways every day, as well as to apply our strengths to areas that we want to grow stronger. These are great little tips that we can use, just ease into our life, making strengths a more leading part of our lives. And so this week's discussion is going to be about talking about and sharing about your strengths with each other, ways that you use them, ways that you like them, ways that you might want to use them to your advantage to help you get stronger at things you want to be stronger at, right? So that we can celebrate them a little bit and learn to get used to developing the interior psychology of feeling good about ourselves, right? Feeling good about the strengths that we do have, really honoring, embracing, and acknowledging them. So we want to use our strengths and the virtues that mean a lot to us. Virtues are our values, right? The things that we want to build and grow in ourselves that mean the most to us. And strengths are gifts that we have that we've also cultivated with our own work and efforts. So they're very high level skills. They're things that you have basically gotten to a level of mastery. Your strengths are where you have developed a level of mastery. And so naturally, master violinists will feel good if they play violin, and we will feel good if we use our strengths. So that's our lesson for this week. diving into and celebrating our strengths. Hopefully also creating a cheering squad for yourself in the back of your mind, right? To support and encourage you and egg you on as you move forward. We all need that internal cheering squad, and to use our virtues that we want to build within ourselves as like a North Star. So that's it for this week, everyone. Thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you in the discussion.